Hello, divers. This is Camilo Saraiva. I'm the Director of Medical and Assistance Services at DAN, and I have the pleasure to receive you here for a podcast with Dr. Dawn Kernagis. She's the Director of Science Research at DEEP, and she's going to be telling us a little bit about her history and what she does, this awesome figure in the diving market. Welcome, Dawn.
Thank you so much. It's so great to be here. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for being here.
Yep.
As you know, in diving sciences, we're always trying to get the best of everything and try to get connections to do our jobs right and move the diving sciences further. So the first thing that I want to ask you, and it's something that it's very interesting for people viewing us today, is about your story, right? It's something that people often ask me, how do I got here or working for Dan and what made me do this career options to work with diving and diving medicine and be here. And I think it's interesting for us to hear from you too and see how you got to the point you are, an exponent on diving medicine. So please tell us a little bit about your story.
Happy to do that. Yeah. And just kind of funny, you were talking about us hopping around from meeting to meeting. We live about 15 minutes from each other, and it takes us coming to Las Vegas to be able to actually see each other, which is hilarious. And same thing with Frauke. I work with her on a bunch of projects, and I usually see her in a completely different state across the country or somewhere in the world at a different meeting. But so my background is not straightforward. There wasn't a path to get to necessarily where I am today, but I have just followed my heart. I'll just kind of drive that point home. Like, I've been very, very fortunate along the way to have some really incredible opportunities and work with just amazing people, amazing mentors. Yes. But I started off, so just go back to the beginning of why I love the ocean, why I love diving. I moved to North Carolina, which is where we live now. But I moved there from the Midwest when I was 8 years old. Nice. And I've been to the ocean once. I've been to the Pacific, and it's cool. I have a picture actually of me standing and looking over the Pacific with my dad, and I'm holding his hand. And it's just this very, just a picture of the future, just this awe. I was just in awe of the ocean. So we moved to North Carolina, and I got the chance to see the Atlantic Ocean. So we went down to the beach and wouldn't get out of the water. I was like, this is just amazing. It was, just like everything on the beach was just fascinating to me. And then we went to the aquarium that's in Pine Knoll Shores and off of North Carolina. And the fish, everything to me at the time was fascinating. So I was studying rocks. I thought dinosaurs were cool. I had like all the science books, but I started to learn more about fish at this aquarium, and I was like, that's what I want to do with my life. And so like 8 years old, I was like, I want to be a marine biologist. This is what I want to study. So I asked my parents for the Jacques Cousteau books, so Ocean World, and then there's one on dolphins and whales, I believe. And they're pretty big books. They're like coffee table books, but they gave them to me for Christmas, and I put them in my backpack and carried them everywhere with me. So I said, I'd like to think that I was training to be a technical diver, carrying around these big, heavy books. And so I just read them cover to cover over and over and over again. So flash forward, I was 8 years old at the time. I wanted to learn how to scuba dive, but I didn't have anybody in my family who dove, and both my parents worked multiple jobs, and so they didn't have the time necessarily to learn how to dive with me. So when I was 15 years old, I took my first scuba class, and it was at a place called Bill's Scuba in Raleigh, North Carolina. It's no longer there, but I was just, they couldn't get rid of me. I was at the dive shop just round the clock, and just, I just soaking up everything I possibly could in that environment. And so pretty quickly, I got into shipwreck diving, which makes a lot of sense off the coast of North Carolina. It's just amazing diving. But I also got into cave diving. So we had gone to, our dive shop did springs trips. We went to the springs in North Florida. I think it was like once every couple of months we would do trips. So I went on one of these trips. My dad went with me, and my sister went with me. She went snorkeling, and we went to Ginny Springs in North Florida. Nice. And in Ginny Springs, they have this one cavern that even as an open water diver, without cave diving training, you can go into it because there's a grate at the back of the cavern. You can't go any further in. You can always see daylight from that cavern. So you weren't hitting any of the restrictions that you'd normally be worried about for an open water diver. Otherwise you should not be going into caves. For sure. But this was set up specifically, for open water divers to experience a cavern dive. And so we went in and I was just in awe. I was like, this is amazing. I want to know what's back beyond that grate. But the clarity of the water, you know, it's gin clear, as we like to say. So you could just see everything, and just the rock formations and the flow of the water, and just feeling that was just so amazing. So I talked to my parents and I said, I want to learn how to cave dive. And my parents were incredibly understanding parents and said, yeah, we'll support you in that. So I started to learn how to cave dive. And
at what age?
So I started at 16.
Wow.
So for my high school prom, I was actually cave diving that weekend. So we would go down, my dive buddy and I, who was also my open water instructor, we would do trips with other friends of ours down to North Florida and just dive all weekend. Like, get down Friday evening, do a dive at Little River Cave, if anybody is familiar with that. And then we would go to different sites all throughout the weekend, and then, you know, drive back Sunday night. And I was back in school the next morning on Monday morning. And, you know, again, my parents were just amazingly supportive of me going through that adventure. And so I still, like, this whole time, like, marine biology is interesting. Marine archaeology is really fascinating too. What about hydrology? Like, I just, you know, thought everything was amazing. So
add-ons,
yeah,
right?
Yeah. So I ended up going to NC State University for undergrad, North Carolina State University. And I think I started off as a physics major. I changed my major several times because, again, everything is fascinating. But during that time, I started working with some cave diving projects. One was during the summer just before I started college. And then I also started working with a cave diving project year round called the Woodville Karst Plain Project, WKPP. And the WKPP was doing deep underwater cave exploration just south of Tallahassee, Florida. And I had heard about them. This is back in the day when internet was pretty new. So we would have these listservs, these email lists where you'd get updates on everything that was happening. And so one of the email updates that I would see on a regular basis is how productive this team was. And it was really impressive, the degree of exploration that they were getting done. So I went to one of their lead divers, who I met at a tech diving conference that was actually right around NEEMO. It was in New Orleans. And actually had the chance to meet Michael Menduno at that conference as well. And I know you all know Michael Menduno very well. And good friend. So I had a conversation with them and I said, I want to work with you guys. And so Jared Jablonski is the lead diver who I worked with at the time, or was talking to at the time. And so he said, yeah, great. You know, finish up. I had a little bit of cave training to finish, even though I've been cave diving for quite some time at that point. So I went through and sat in on a course with him just to finish up kind of the requisites, and then went to Tallahassee, Florida, and started working with the Woodville Karst Plain Project. And I worked with them for over a decade. So this is a volunteer-based organization. We were doing, when I say deep underwater cave exploration, the average depth is around 300 feet in those caves. Wow. So that team was really pioneering the types of gas that you're using, the decompression profiles for doing those deep dives. So, you know, think about it in a cave. You're down at that depth for a really long period of time. And so I ended up working with them as start off as a surface manager or support diver, and then surface manager and kind of an operations manager with that team. And just watch the evolution of equipment and protocol and just all the things, you know. So we would have like researchers come out to study our divers because they're like, you guys are doing things that nobody else is doing. I think the longest dive that they did at the time was 300 feet for, I think, 7 hours of bottom time. Wow. So, and then the decompression around that, I know you know, was
probably
very long.
Double that.
Yeah. So essentially it was a 24-hour dive, right? So, so there's a lot of support teams that are in and around that, and all the equipment and everything else. So it was a really amazing opportunity to work with just world-class divers and just see this evolution of technical diving and research and everything around that. And just to note, like, it wasn't just exploration. We were doing a lot of science around that. We were doing hydrology research and hydrogeology research and dive medicine research. So there's a lot of science that was integrated. So the person who thinks that everything is fascinating, I was like, well, how do I translate this into a career? And so I was working in the dive industry at the time. So I got out of undergrad, ended up working for an organization called Global Underwater Explorers, which is a training organization, and also Halcyon Equipment. So the two kind of grew out together out of the WKPP, out of that cave diving project. So a lot of this protocol and training that was required and equipment that we needed as a team ended up becoming the staple for GUE and for Halcyon. So it was really cool, again, just to see all that grow. And now, it's pervasive throughout the dive community. So it's just really cool to see that. So I ended up getting into research because I was watching my team members doing these really risky dives, and I had questions about how could we better protect our divers. Thinking about nutrition.
We're all about that, right?
Yeah, and that's exactly what you all do, right, on a daily basis. And so, and just to note, through this whole time while I'm working in the dive industry and WKPP and everything, I would do a lot of research, be a research participant in a lot of studies at Divers Alert Network and at Duke University. So there's a long history with Dan, actually, in my career. But I started asking questions about how we could better protect our divers. I was interested in, is there a genetic component to, some divers being more susceptible to decompression sickness or not? So ended up, there's a really long story around all this, but I ended up writing a proposal. It got funded. So I had a very weird view of like what funding looked like at the time. I was like, it's not that easy typically.
It's always difficult, right?
Yeah. So I was working with Duke University and Dr. Richard Moon at Duke University, who's just a legend in dive medicine. So I'm pretty sure that's why it got funded. It probably had nothing to do with me. And long story short, I turned that into a PhD project. Got in a joke that I wouldn't have gotten into the PhD program otherwise, but I had funding. So they're like, yeah, come on board. And throughout that, I ended up finishing my PhD at Duke University. I did my postdoc at Duke University as well. And throughout that whole time, I was working with the dive medicine program at Duke, also doing other extreme environment medicine research there that they were leading. And then also I worked with Divers Alert Network on some field studies. So Dr. Neil Pollack, I had the chance to work with him on some studying deep rebreather divers in the field. And that was just awesome. Yeah, so Dr. Richard Van was actually on my PhD thesis committee. And so, it's just like this long history that ties back into Dan.
And with the great names, right?
I'm just, again, feel very honored to have been able to work with those people and have them as mentors throughout, that part of my career. And even now. So I ended up leaving Duke to take a position at a place called the Institute for Human and Machine Cognition, which how does that fit into diving? But the founder was interested in building a program on human performance in extreme environments. So that was a good fit for the background. Yeah. So moved to Pensacola, Florida. I did that for 5 years, and it was just an amazing opportunity to do applied research. So we like to say applied research in that it's, you're working directly with the end users and helping them make decisions on equipment or just protocol or just the way that they're doing things to keep those individuals as safe as possible. So worked with divers in that setting. We worked with pilots, military pilots, and then we also did a lot of work with NASA. So that was a really cool opportunity to kind of expand that skill set. And then I came back to North Carolina. So I went to NC State for undergrad, Duke for grad school and postdoc, then ended up at UNC. So if anybody's familiar with, if you're familiar with the triangle, which is very competitive.
All around the triangle.
Yeah. So I ended up I ended up going to UNC as faculty. So I got recruited to work there as a researcher, ended up as the vice chair for research there. It was fantastic. And you're like, why neurosurgery? So I don't know if it necessarily always makes sense, but my interest when I talk about performance for humans in extreme environments, I was specifically interested in the brain and nervous system as my work kind of grew along. And so if you want to think about an extreme environment for the brain and nervous system, the operating room and anesthesia is about as extreme as it can get. So there's a lot of tie over, and this. So from studying humans in extreme environments, there's a lot of lessons we can learn studying them that translate to clinical populations.
To several other areas.
And then the same thing. Sure. There's things that we can learn from those patient populations that translate back to healthy humans in extreme environments. So it was a really cool way to kind of merge all those interests. And then, we can talk about this, but I ended up getting recruited. I was not planning to go anywhere. I was in a very comfortable academic position. UNC treated me really well. We had some really cool projects going. But last year, I had some conversations with folks, so Kurt Crack, and then some other friends of mine who are working with an organization called DEEP. And they essentially said, we'd like to talk to you about coming here as director of scientific research. And it was a hard, it wasn't hard in the sense it was just fascinating. And I can talk about what deep is in a second. But to me, it was an opportunity that I just couldn't pass up. It's really hard to leave a faculty position. That's, it was pretty locked in. Again, we had a really good research group, but I was like, if I didn't take that position with Deep, I was going to regret it. So now I'm with Deep. Yeah.
No, and we want to know everything about it.
Yeah.
Because it's something new. It's something amazing. I read a little bit about it to be able to interview you properly.
Yeah.
And at some point you say it's like the NASA for underwater, right? It's something that it's really exciting. It's groundbreaking, and we definitely want to know more about it.
Yeah.
So, but let me ask you one thing, because you mentioned your partnership with Divers Alert Network when you were doing research at Duke. Most people know we're still affiliated with the institutions in the area, with Duke, with UNC, NC State. We run several different projects with each of them. But most people know that we started inside Duke, right?
Yes.
And we grew out of the university at some point. But it's important, this association, we keep this association and we keep investing in research. We have Frauke leading our team today. And this is all made possible by the memberships and all the things that we have in this 44 years of existence, right? And I know you are a DEN member.
Of course, yes.
So in your view, why is it important for you to be a DEN member, and how do you think this contribute for people watching us today to understand better and understand why we're saying lately, right? Every diver should be a member. Yeah. So getting from you, a big name in the industry, why you are a member and why it's important. It's something that it's very important for us too.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I mean, one, I was exposed to DAN pretty early on because it is local to us. The insurance obviously is the biggest piece of that, I think, or at least initially it was getting that insurance, but it's also access to the resources, right? So being able to access the medics and individuals if you have questions. I just had a conversation yesterday with a woman who said, I've had a DAN membership for, 20 something years. She's like, I never thought about having that resource at my fingertips if I had a medical question, a diving medical question. Yeah. And so Dan actually helped her make a decision about a surgery that she had to have. And I think that's just amazing to have that at your fingertips. But then also the piece that you were talking about too is that money goes to support the research that we're talking about. Exactly. And that's to keep divers safer and keep them as healthy as possible in those environments. So for all those reasons, I think Dan's critical.
And even this case that you mentioned, right? Yeah. She didn't even need to be a member to call us.
Right.
We service every diver. We're there to serve the diving community, not just the members. So this is something that sometimes we say to people and they are, oh, yeah, but I can call. If I'm not a member, can I call you? Yeah, sure, you can. You can. And we're there to make every diver safer, no matter if the diver is a member or not.
Yeah. No, we're very lucky to have Dan.
So I thank you for your support as a member, as I thank all of our members for the support and to keep us going and doing what we do. And now to the most interesting part of the interview, right? Your new position and Deep, which is a groundbreaking but new concept, new idea, and I think it's important for people seeing us to understand what you do there and what Deep is and does for us for diving sciences.
Yeah, no, that's so great. So just for anybody who's listening, so if you go to deep.com, and you said you check this out as well. So if you go to deep.com, you can find more information on what we're doing and see some really pretty pictures and updates on all the work that we're doing. So Deep is an organization that's focused on, and our tagline is making humans aquatic. Nice. We're doing that through development of subsea human-occupied habitats so that people can live and work undersea. But it's not just the habitats, it's not just the technology, it's also the training that's required around that, it's the human research that's required to use those habitats safely. And then all the other technology that goes in support of working and living in that habitat environment. And so, so the NASA piece, I mean, we would aspire one day, like in, 100 years from now to be, I mean, NASA's incredible, right? But I think just thinking about it, we're comprehensive, right? It's a comprehensive system where it's not just a technology company, but we're doing all of it to make it all work together and allow people to live in these and work in these environments. My role is director of scientific research. So what I get to do is talk to scientists, talk to potential end users, start to look at who can work with us and make them aware of what we're doing and what's coming online, that we'll have these undersea habitats very soon. But start talking to them about the research that they would be interested in doing with that habitat, look for potential funding opportunities, and downstream actually support some of those or work with them to work with them to identify those funding opportunities and pursue them, like from federal agencies, for example, from the Navy or NASA. And then just working with the scientists as they conduct their science to make sure that what they've studied and the data they collect is translated in a meaningful way, whether that's outreach or policy or whatever that might look like. And then my other role with all that is to also make sure that those scientists have all the resources that they need. So for example, if they go into a habitat and we have a mission running, they have the equipment that they need, they have the setup that's required to conduct the science that they're doing. So it's an amazing opportunity. So I kind of talked about that path, right? That like the walking path that I've been on. And, I had a career in the diving industry and then a career in research. And now I get to merge those two. So I kind of laugh that I'm like working my entire life's Rolodex right now for this job, which is incredible. I mean, it's just so much fun. And it's so much fun to come back into the diving community, really like full circle in this role. So yeah, it's a lot of fun.
It's nice. It's nice. No, it's good. I was looking at the website and I was seeing the sketches of the habitats and all of this. And it's interesting because most people don't think about this, right? It's so trendy now to talk about Mars and how we're getting there. And if we think about the bottom of the ocean, it's as foreign as or even more than going to Mars, right? It's something that is
inner space.
The physics and the physiology involved in all of this is so baffling, right? It's amazing, and you work day in, day out with this is a dream, right?
Yeah, it's amazing.
It's so good.
Yes, I mean the last undersea habitat, human occupied habitat, was built in 1986. So Aquarius Reef Base, which is in the Florida Keys now, and slowly but surely it's an older. Yeah, so it's going to be coming offline soon. It's just it's had an amazing lifespan, but it's past its lifespan now. But I actually had the opportunity to be crew at Aquarius Reef Base for a NASA mission. Nice. So NASA runs an undersea mission, and they did it from 2000 to I think it's to 2019 every year, where they sent astronauts and scientists to live in that habitat and Aquarius Reef Base, and we would study, do different types of research, test out protocols before they went to space station. They had crew training opportunities. So I was just incredibly lucky to have the opportunity to get invited to be a crew member on that NASA mission. And so it was in 2016, NEEMO 21, the 21st mission. And just, again, like I realized the kind of research, how much work you can get done when you're living undersea in saturation. So I can talk about that in a second too, but essentially you don't have the time restrictions that you typically would with a normal recreational scuba dive. So when you're in saturation, your body's equilibrated, the gases are equilibrated to the surrounding environment because you've been down there for so long. Now, this also means it's going to take you a very long time to come back to the surface.
So, for sure.
For our mission, we were living at about 50 feet or so in this habitat, and we're breathing air through the whole thing, but we had about 16 hours to come back to the surface. So when I say come back to the surface, we were on the bottom, but they decompressed us inside the habitat. But what was really cool is because we were equilibrated, when we would go out and do dives outside the habitat, so there's a little opening called the moon pool that goes out. We were doing 5-6 hour dives. So if you just think about the amount of work that you can accomplish, instead of going up and down and moving your equipment around,
much more efficient.
Yeah. So we were building coral nurseries for the Coral Restoration Foundation. We were conducting, marine engineering studies. We were collecting samples. We were testing out protocol that NASA was testing for planetary exploration. So it was just a very, very cool opportunity. And then there's research in the habitat too, right? So you have these humans living in an extreme environment. So I collected blood samples and some other samples from individuals to study different markers and everything else of what, how the body was responding to that environment. So again, I got that firsthand opportunity to, again, it kind of allowed me to merge my careers, right? So it's a diver and somebody who'd done worked on deep underwater exploration projects. And then the research piece to combine that as a crew member was just amazing. And so I have that perspective now going into this job. When I talk to scientists about the kind of work that they can accomplish, it's incredibly exciting. So
the more we think about this and the lengths we went and what we still have to go, right? So it's amazing. I'm always thinking about that and how we can participating in the research meetings with Frauke and going there, just sometimes just sitting and listening. I'm not skilled enough to give my opinion in some of the meetings, but I'm there, I'm listening and thinking and trying to suggest things and study a lot, right?
That's great.
So every time I go to a meeting of those, I say, oh my God, now I have 2 hours of study to do.
I have so much reading to do. Yeah, exactly.
I got a list of articles to read now.
Yeah.
And this, I think it's our life in science, right? It's always trying to think different ways to do things and reading and studying and trying to build up on the previous knowledge that we just acquired. And it's so nice.
I used to play this game with my dad when I was little. So a lot of kids do this, right? So where I start asking why. Like, you know, oh, why is the sky blue? And then he would answer me and then, but why? But why? But why? But why? And I get to do that professionally now, right? Which is, we get to do that. So it's incredible. And talking about Frauke, like she and I have had great conversations about research that can be done, in these environments when it comes to the humans in saturation and living in that environment. So the research that was done, around saturation diving was in the 70s, I would say 60s, 70s, early 80s, really. I mean, there's some research that's been done since then, but the bulk of it was done then. It's very safe. I mean, there's a lot of research that's been done to make sure that type of diving, so commercial divers and military divers do saturation diving even now. And but what's interesting is it'll be exciting to revisit that research. One, looking at different populations, so not just young, healthy males, but again, we want to increase accessibility to the undersea environment. So, looking at women, looking at different ages, looking at different fitness levels, and seeing how that environment impacts those individuals, I think is going to be really exciting. And I know Frauke and I have had some really good conversations around that. Yeah. But also the technology's advanced so much, right? So if you look at obviously what was available back then versus what we have now, and then some of the molecular studies that we can do and all the other exciting things. So yeah, I'm really excited about the potential for human diving research and what we can do through DEEP and through these opportunities. And again, even working in collaboration with Dan, we have a collaboration with you guys actually. So already,
Nice. Well, so I don't know about that.
Yeah. Okay.
It's new for me and for people watching us. Yeah. Tell me a little bit about that, just for my own information.
Yeah, and it's actually not a research study. So I'm working with Frauke and Dr. Virginie Papadopoulou, who's at University of North Carolina, and Melissa Alardo, who's at University of Utah. And we put together a proposal. This is before I'd actually started with DEEP, but I was, this is when I was in conversations about joining DEEP. We put together a proposal that's related to STEM outreach. So there's a big desire to grow the workforce and get more young people involved in undersea medicine and anything around kind of human undersea research. And so the Office of Naval Research is funding us as a 3-year project. And we are developing an 8-part docuseries around how humans live and work and conduct science undersea. So we're talking about diving, like different aspects of diving. We're talking about ROVs and AUVs, so the robotic side. And then the last bit of it is kind of thinking about the future, like where could things go for humans undersea? Okay. And we're not just doing the docuseries, we're also doing some design challenges at the grade school level and also the university level. And then we also have an educators challenge. So we're kind of challenging teachers to develop lesson plans around the content that we're teaching. So
Nice.
really excited to work with everybody around this topic. I know we're all very passionate about growing the workforce in this space.
Yeah.
And so, and that's something that's really important for us at Deep, but I know Dan as well. And so again, just really excited to work with Frauke on that project.
Yeah. We're always looking of ways of involving younger scientists and bringing bright young minds to our game, right?
You guys are so good about
amazing.
that. And I know Frauke's set a really good precedent with the internship program, and Dan's really, really good about building out those skills and giving young individuals an opportunity to come into this community, which is awesome. So
Now we have great numbers. We have the interns every year with the STEM program that you're mentioning, and you mentioned ONR. A big shout to Dr. Sandra Chapman.
Sandra's
our
fantastic.
friend there. and so supportive and so invested in growing the community, the scientific community around diving. And I think this is very important. This is what will move us forward and make diving safer, right? It's our main objective to get every diver safer on every dive.
It's fantastic.
Yeah,
Sandra's been really great on the workforce development piece too. She's really engaged, younger researchers to get involved in the undersea medicine community. So Sandra is the program manager for U.S. Office of Naval Research Undersea Medicine Program, and it's been really an honor to work with her. And we've got a really good force of women researchers that are working in collaboration with her as well on that workforce development piece, which we're really excited about. So
very nice. Well, awesome job.
Thank you.
I cannot say anything that will not say thank you so much for the job you do. Thank you so much for being here and to support us with your membership. As I said, thank you for being a member. I'm a member since 99.
Okay.
So it's something that
I'm not going to say how long I've been a member because then I'm aging myself. But it's longer than that, just so you know. It was cool. So working with Neil Pollock back in the day for some of the field studies when I was in grad school, we would be out there collecting data. Essentially, it was an event called Inner Space. So they would do deep rebreather dives every day. Mm-hmm. So again, if these people are doing this by choice, like let's go collect data on them. If whoever wants to be, a participant in the studies. And so we would do ultrasound on them to look for bubbles. We collected dive profile data. I think we even got to a place where we started doing blood sample collection, like before and after dives. But what was really cool too is it's having Divers Alert Network there provided this kind of cool opportunity for people to just pick Dr. Pollock's brain and ask questions. Mm-hmm. And again, it's kind of like this bigger picture service and integration with the community, which is a lot of fun. So I will say this, it was awesome to also be able, as a grad student, to go to Grand Cayman every year. I have friends that are like, I work in a lab in the basement and you go to Grand Cayman. I was like, we all pick our projects. So yeah. But it was a lot of fun. So really, again, just grateful for the, what Dan brings. So yeah.
So Don, you were saying about the opportunities and the grants and all of this, mm-hmm. but one big thing that we have in our community is the scholarships, mm-hmm. right? Mm-hmm. And one of the scholarships is from one of your institutions, one that I know it's dear to your heart, mm-hmm. that is the Women's Divers Hall of Fame. Mm-hmm. Can you talk to us about this? Can you say something?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so we have many scholarships and training grants that are available through Women Divers Hall of Fame. So Women Divers Hall of Fame just is there to recognize women who have made an impact on the diving community. I was very thankful. I was inducted in 2016, actually. So that was a big year for me because that was a NASA mission. Nice. and the Women Divers Hall of Fame. But just an honor, right? So these women are just people I've looked up to my entire career. So just to be a part of that Sea Sister family, as we call ourselves, the Sea Sisters, has been incredible. But the thing that I'm most passionate about, I think we're all very passionate about, is the scholarship program that we run through mm-hmm. WOODF. So WOODF is also a nonprofit organization. And so we do a lot of fundraising. And the bulk of that fundraising goes back towards scholarships and grants. We actually are getting ready to celebrate our 25th anniversary next year.
Nice.
So we're going to be offering some really exciting training grant opportunities. So for an individual who's already certified, we'll have training grants that are focused on more advanced training or even instructor level training. We also have training grants for people to get into scuba in the first place and actually do their first courses, which is really exciting. We have specialties, so training grants around underwater photography or even different types of equipment grants. And then we also have research scholarships as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I actually work with an individual, Dr. Jonathan Clark, who his wife, her name was Dr. Laurel Clark. So she was actually a NASA astronaut and a dive medicine expert. And she was actually killed in the Columbia accident. But in her honor, and one of the things she was really passionate about was human performance and human extreme environment physiology research. Mm-hmm. And so we created a research grant in her honor. So nice. Individuals who are in graduate school can get funding to support the research that they do. So that's just one example of many opportunities that Women Divers Hall of Fame provides. And so every year we open up those scholarship applications. And so I would just encourage individuals to please check it out. A lot of them are geared towards women, but not all of them. Some of them are open to women and men, and anyone from a variety of different backgrounds as well. So I would say definitely check it out if there's interest. And I also know that Divers Alert Network has, again, research opportunities too, and there's some synergy between what Dan offers and then what Wood If offers. So
we're always working with all these institutions. Yeah. We share common goals, right?
Yeah.
We want to make diving safer. We want to move the science of diving forward. So it's all ONR, Women Divers Hall of Fame, then the universities that we mentioned, mainly the ones close to us there, Duke, UNC, NC State. I think UC San Diego, it's another one that we have to recognize this. So it's all divers around the same goal, right? Yeah. Focused on moving us forward. Yeah. Yeah. Nice. Very nice. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for everything that you do. And we hope to hear more about Deep in the near future.
You will. Don't worry about that.
And it's something that it's really, really great for us to have this opportunity. Yeah. Thank you again.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. It's been great chatting with you today. Yeah.
It's a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.